Greetings, Internet faithful. I am some guy named Rob from On Your Marks Wrestling, and welcome to Rob Recaps. Now, this is not going to be a Raw, Smackdown, or 205 Live specific recap. What this is going to be is a main roster recap in the wake of WrestleMania 34. The reason why I'm putting all three shows together in one large recap is because essentially these three shows are an extension of WrestleMania 34, because I know WrestleMania 34 wasn't long enough on its own, right? But because you're going to have things like major returns from injury, major signings, major call-ups, major announcements across all three shows, setups for new angles, setups for new feuds, it kind of makes sense to kind of put it all together in the context of this is everything that follows WrestleMania. I'm going to go back more or less to the old original format starting next week once things have settled down, but I think for this week it's kind of appropriate that I put it all together. With that in mind, I'm going to have a timestamp in the video description for when each of the shows starts. I'm also going to put a timestamp up on screen right now for each and every one of you. So if you want to skip ahead to what it is that you want to watch or hear my opinions on, and if you like this sort of thing, leave a comment below the video of what you like and dislike. And hey, let's get it on. We open up Monday Night Raw with Stephanie McMahon coming out to the ring to cut a self-aggrandizing promo laced with a surprising amount of casual racism. She talks about how she was the MVP of the mixed tag match at WrestleMania, how she brought out the best in Ronda Rousey, how she made the courageous transition from executive to in-ring performer. It's delivered with all of the convincing gusto of your average 9th grade drama student. It ends up turning into Stephanie McMahon wanting to sort of bury the hatchet and reach out and offer the olive branch to Ronda Rousey so that way they can work together to make Ronda Rousey an even bigger star than she is already. Cue Ronda Rousey's music, she comes to the ring, and much to the crowd's dismay, Ronda Rousey has a big smile on her face when Stephanie McMahon offers a handshake. Rousey accepts the handshake, the smile turns into a scowl, which was sold really, really well and was kept long enough for the crowd to really see it up on the big LCD screens. The crowd pops huge as Rousey does a takedown on Stephanie McMahon, yanks off the arm brace, puts her in the armbar again. Stephanie is tapping out and screaming. Rousey gets up, waves to the crowd, walks to the back. Medical personnel come out to take a look at Stephanie McMahon, and as she's being helped out of the ring to the backstage area, JoJo comes on and asks that the crowd give a moment of respect for Stephanie McMahon, and Stephanie McMahon is jeered out of the building. In theory, I should really love this segment because it's a much needed and much overdue comeuppance segment for Stephanie McMahon. The unfortunate thing is that on TV, the selling of the armbar by Stephanie McMahon did not make Ronda Rousey look strong. Stephanie McMahon is no Meryl Streep. She's not a good actress, and it's kind of ironic that someone who spent their entire life in and around the wrestling industry has picked up absolutely nothing in terms of how you would sell anything. Her in-ring psychology is absolutely brutal. It didn't look good. It didn't make Rousey look as... It's not like Rousey needs Stephanie McMahon to make her look strong anyway, but you would think that Stephanie McMahon would have enough presence of mind to sell this properly, to at least rehearse a look of pain and anguish and fear, or something to that effect. So that way, when the TV cameras are focused right on her face, it looks good to the 3.5 million people that are watching Raw at home, and not just to the 15,000-20,000 people that are in the arena. Because I'm sure to the arena it looked great. I'm sure the segment looked fantastic to everyone who was watching live. But as far as the home audience experience goes, you could see that it was like, oh no, please don't hurt me, Rhonda. Please don't hurt me. Please don't do this to me. Why are you doing like that's how it came off. It came off like a really bad high school play, and it really brought the segment down, in my opinion. Still, I'm going to give this a passable grade. It's not necessarily bad. It's not great. Certainly not what I would consider in the good column, but I don't think it was brought down enough to really be considered bad. It's a passable segment. It did what it needed to do, sort of. I'm really, really hoping that this is not an invitation to turn this into a McMahon versus Rousey thing in the new era versus the McMahon versus Austin thing in the Attitude Era. We don't want Stephanie McMahon on TV every week. More McMahon on TV and more Roman Reigns on TV, they are not good things. These are not things that we want. The WWE Universe is very clear about this. They don't want this. Please don't give us this. Instead, what they can give us is a little bit more of Nia Jax. Nia Jax in the next segment comes out to a great pop as the Raw Women's Champion. Jax looking really good with her new ring attire. They've changed things up as of WrestleMania, and I guess they're going to keep her like that with sort of the gold and the black. And I'm not exactly sure if this is something that's intentional, but it seems to me that they're giving Nia Jax a little bit more sex appeal, I guess is for lack of a better term, now that she's a face rather than a heel, because her outfit it's got a little bit more of the cleavage on display. And I'm trying not to sound like a sexist pig when I say this. It just looks like she's dolled up a little bit more than she was as a heel. I like the body confidence, don't get me wrong, and she's a very lovely woman, don't get me wrong about that. I do hope that they're not trying to make her more eye candy just because she's a face now, because I think that's a little bit insulting. If you're gonna be eye candy, face or heel, and anyway. But yeah, I've noticed the change in the ring attire, but she looks really great and really confident in the new ring attire, which is fine. Bliss comes out to cut a promo that's, of course, peppered with fat jokes. So in the first half hour of Monday Night Raw, we have racist humor and we have fat jokes. So it looks like now that Adam Sandler's not making movies anymore for Hollywood, he's gotten a job writing for Monday Night Raw. So it's good to see that Adam Sandler's landed on his feet. The one thing that I was really impressed by was while Bliss was cutting her promo, Nia Jax kind of silently took command of the crowd just by waving the mic. A small asshole chant kind of developed for Alexa Bliss, and all Nia Jax had to do was just sort of point the mic in different directions to the crowd, and the chant got louder and louder and louder. And when Nia put the mic down, the crowd kind of quieted down. So after a brief exchange of words by Nia and Alexa Bliss, we get the major announcement for the scheduled tag team match that Nia Jax's partner will be Ember Moon, who has been called up from NXT. Crowd goes nuts. We come back to the match. The match itself is nothing special, but the whole point of it was to announce that Ember Moon was on the main roster now, and to help get both Moon and Jax over. I don't think that was really necessary to get them over. I think they're both very over as it is, but the segment accomplished what it needed to. Ember Moon pins Alexa Bliss after a really great looking eclipse, and we move to the next segment. Overall, I liked what they did here. It was economical, it did what it needed to do, and didn't take up too much time. And I'm not sure how they're going to set up who the next feud is for Nia Jax in terms of the Raw Women's Championship. One assumes that Alexa Bliss is going to get her rematch at Backlash, but it's hard to say for sure. In any case, Ember Moon has been added to the equation in the women's division. It's really going to help boost the ranks a little bit, I think. We move backstage to Kurt Angle, who is joined by Braun Strowman and Nicholas. They with a little bit of a sight gag, they have Nicholas standing behind Braun Strowman, who completely covers him up from the camera. They relinquish the tag team title belts in one of the best lines that I can remember. there was a scheduling conflict with Nicholas, the fourth grade, which I thought was hilarious. The crowd loved it. Braun Strowman threatens that once Nicholas is done with school, they're coming back for the tag team titles, and Nicholas drops a line that whomever the champions are at the time are going to get these hands. The crowd really eats it up. It's kind of sad, especially later on in the show, with certain other people that are going to be on the mic that a 10-year-old upstages them. But yeah, overall, I think that while I liked the segment and I liked what it will turn into because it's going to set up a tag team tournament later on, I'm wondering why they actually went through with this instead of actually giving Strowman a real partner or just letting him do it as a solo. Let him be the single person holding the tag team championships. It's been done before. Yes, I know it's been done before to have these sort of lone wolf tag team champions. But this is the type of thing that Strowman can make work. Strowman can stay over, and he can make it seem credible. So I really wish that they had a better plan for this, but it is what it is. At least we got a few minutes of entertainment out of all of this. The next segment was the debut of No Way Jose after a very, very quick promo going into the break. We come out of the commercial break. No Way Jose comes down to the ring. Absolutely nothing noteworthy to this match other than the conga line. And the conga line intro took about 7 times longer than the match itself. It was kind of pointless, kind of a waste of time. I'm told that No Way Jose is a much better performer than what we saw in the ring on Monday Night Raw. Time will tell. As he apparently is coming back from an injury of some sort, from my understanding. Yeah, overall, not a great debut on the Post-Mania show. Next up is the Seth Rollins promo segment. Another segment I wasn't particularly thrilled with. It felt very much like the same old that was leading into WrestleMania 34, only this time Seth Rollins was the champ instead of The Miz, because we get Seth Rollins coming out to get himself over as champion, his Grand Slam winner. Out comes Finn Balor, which has kind of been the norm, and then out comes The Miz with the Miztourage. They tease an altercation toward the end of the segment, and then out comes another return, which is Jeff Hardy. So it looks like this whole segment was really almost like an extended introduction to bring Jeff Hardy back into the fold following his shoulder injury, his torn rotator cuff. And yeah, it happened, but yeah, it again, like the No Way Jose segment, it just seemed kind of pointless. Next up is a match between Sasha Banks and Mandy Rose. As the match is about to start, Bayley's music hits. Out comes Bayley. She does sort of her fanfare type of thing, plays to the crowd, kind of gets in the ring to let Sasha know she's just out there to be with her friend. It leads to a lot of arguing amongst the commentators about Bayley learning to steal the spotlight from Sasha Banks. It really didn't serve a whole lot of a purpose for anything except in the ending of the match, where on the outside, Bayley went to go clothesline Mandy Rose. Mandy Rose ducks, takes out Sasha Banks instead. It leads to a bit of a stare down. Banks gets back into the ring, eats a knee from Mandy Rose, and hey, Mandy Rose actually wins. This is the first time I can remember seeing Mandy Rose win on TV. So that was exciting. It was good to see. Welcome to the W Club, Mandy. After the match, I expected to see this being the moment where Bayley would finally turn full heel and join Absolution in a beatdown of Sasha Banks. Instead, what we got was the ring just sort of cleared out and Paige came in with a microphone, and the mood the tonal shift was a little bit abrupt as Paige announces her retirement. Now, I'm not going to say that the tonal shift was bad. I actually think that this was about as good as you could get for having Paige announce her retirement, which must have been very, very difficult for her to do. I know at WrestleMania, during the Women's Battle Royal, She had a look like she was going to start crying on camera when Michael Cole asked if she was going to compete in the Battle Royal next year. And Paige just kind of had to do the fake smile, like, ha ha ha, yeah, maybe next year I'll be in there, Mike, ha ha ha. But the look on her face looked like she was about to openly start weeping. So we finally got it out of the way. It's finally been confirmed that she will never be cleared for wrestling because of the extent of her neck injuries over the years. Thankfully, this will lead to something nice later on. Spoiler warning. But they give her a good amount of time to kind of address the crowd and talk about all the things that she's accomplished and how much she enjoys what she was doing and how much she loves the WWE Universe. The fans give her a great send-off. I thought it was a good moment. I'm kind of glad in a way that they put off that heel turn in order to be able to do this, because it would have been way too distracting. They had to get this out of the way. So they did get it out of the way. The heel turn for Bayley will have to wait another week, but at least it's going to get done. One of the things I'm a little concerned with is what's going to happen with Absolution now that Paige has announced her retirement, because, she's presumably not going to be a manager anymore. Spoiler, she won't be. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the ladies in Absolution and what they're going to do with that. Back in the ring, JoJo announces Elias, and Elias is in the ring to talk about his performance at WrestleMania 34 and how his WrestleMania moment was ruined, and talks about how he's going to give his performance tonight and how the city of New Orleans is filled with scumbags. And the crowd almost gets Elias to crack up by chanting, "We are scumbags." And that was great. Elias almost laughed and broke character on camera because of the crowd. Elias gets his song started. Out comes Bobby Lashley, who's back from Impact Wrestling. And he takes Elias out in very, very short order, including a really impressive looking delayed vertical suplex, which he then converts to a one-armed suplex and just uses the other arm to kind of like goad the crowd into cheering louder and louder before finally falling with Elias. A good segment. I think it did what it needed to do. It brought Lashley back and didn't belabor the point too much. Wonder where he's going to fit into things. Is he going to start in the mid-card? Is he going to start in the main event? What's going to happen with him? Is he going to be part of the Superstar Shakedown and they're just bringing him back on TV just because they have him there? So time will tell what they're going to do with Lashley. The debuts on Monday Night Raw keep coming fast and furious as the Authors of Pain answer an open challenge from Heath Slater and Rhino. The AOP comes out to a huge pop. Quick match that ends with a last chapter on Slater in about a minute's time, which I think is the perfect way to introduce a new monster tag team into the Raw tag team division. The only thing that I didn't like about this was that they just kind of left Paul Ellering at ringside. They're like, no, we're leaving on our own. And they didn't really explain why, unless you went to the WWE YouTube page or went to the network and got one of those sort of Raw exclusives. I think that this is something that you need to explain on the main show, why the Authors of Pain are not keeping Ellering with them. Now, I would say from a logical standpoint, I don't think Ellering wants a tour on a full-time schedule, which the Authors of Pain would obviously be on. Ellering's getting up there in the years. I think he's in his mid-60s right now. He's not the most mobile guy in the world, and those are long ramps that he's going to have to walk up and down every night. So I could see him wanting to maybe go back to NXT. I was talking to Lee off the air, and he was suggesting that he might go back to try and do sort of that one more thing, one last project with perhaps his daughter, who's getting into the wrestling business. I suggested that if they do that, if you have the AOP using the last chapter as their finish, you give a finisher name called the epilogue to his next project, which I think would kind of fit in with the whole motif for Paul Ellering. But yeah, overall, really, really liking the fact that AOP is on the Monday night show. Should be interesting to see what they do with them. Up next, we have Roman Reigns coming to the ring, much to the crowd, much to the dismay of the crowd in New Orleans. To cut a promo, he limps out heavily, looking very, very beat up and sort of dejected and pissed off. And it's a lot of promo about how he's been hard done by and disrespected by Vince McMahon and the management, how he didn't know what was going to happen about his match at the Greatest Royal Rumble until he saw it on the internet. The crowd is having absolutely none of it. When Roman Reigns says that he got his ass beat, the crowd starts chanting, "You deserve it." They are not cutting him any slack whatsoever. They're making it very, very clear. They are being very, very vocal that they no longer want to see him in the main event picture. And Roman actually seemed to be taken off guard. His promo completely tanked. I think the whole thing was he was expecting some sympathy. They were trying to play him in a sympathetic light, that he was the victim, that he was hard done by, that he was being held back. And the crowd they wouldn't take it. They just were not on his side. Samoa Joe's music hits, and the crowd just goes absolutely nuts. The Joe, Joe, Joe chants were deafening, I would imagine, in that arena. Just as Samoa Joe's about to start his promo, the crowd starts turning on Roman Reigns some more with a "Joe is gonna kill you" chant. Which again seemed to visibly shake Roman Reigns in the ring. Whenever they would cut back to him, he looked like he was completely off his game. Like this was not part of the game plan, and things were going completely. They were going completely sideways for him. Joe absolutely buries Reigns on the mic. The crowd was absolutely eating it up. It looks like they're setting up a match at Backlash between Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe. The crowd is very much on the side of Joe for this segment. Joe is money on the mic. There's no doubt about that. He is absolute money on the mic. This is a guy that people want to see as a world champion. They're making it very clear that Roman Reigns is persona non grata in the main event scene. So I don't know what they're going to do in management, because their plans are backfiring in their faces really, really hard. And I have a feeling that if they do start putting the title on Reigns and keeping it there for any length of time, they're just going to see their business drop off again. They're not going to make any money with Roman Reigns as champion. Now, I want to backtrack a little bit, because I'm looking through my notes and I realize that I forgot a match. I forgot the Revival versus the Good Brothers match, which, honestly, it was a match that we've seen 100 times before, or at least it feels that way. The match was passable, but pretty forgettable. The Revival win, it was very safe and by the numbers, and one of the reasons why I forgot to mention it earlier is because the match itself was not especially noteworthy, and the only reason why I remembered to go back is looking at my notes. The next segment is Titus Worldwide versus the team that I'm going to dub the Woken Warriors, which is Woken, Matt Hardy, and Bray Wyatt. This, of course, is the second of the tag title tournament matches to take place on Monday Night Raw this week. The first one, of course, being Revival versus the Good Brothers. And if you go back to my WrestleMania review, I had said that in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, they should have had the Revival being the last two eliminated by Matt Hardy and by Bray Wyatt, because it would have set this up more naturally. Because obviously Titus Worldwide did not win this match. So you would have had some heat for this already instead of trying to generate heat for it. The WWE really dropped the ball on this one. They really had an opportunity to do something really good, and instead they did something really stupid, which is kind of par for the course these days, it seems. There was this match was, again, mostly forgettable. There was a comedic moment where Apollo Crews pulls off a rather impressive in-ring maneuver, and both Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt stop to get the crowd to applaud the maneuver, and it gets to the point where Apollo starts clapping along, saying that, like, hey, it was pretty good, wasn't it? And then, of course, they attack Apollo and kind of take advantage of the distraction. There was at one point a Matt Hardy and Titus O'Neil back and forth with a Delete versus Worldwide chant, which was nowhere near as over as when Ty Dillinger did it in the Battle Royal with Matt Hardy for the 10 chant. It felt very derivative, and I'm amazed that they went right back to that pretty much the next night. I don't, it was like 24 hours later and they went right back to the same gag. So the long and the short of this is that it sets up a final between the Revival and the Woken Warriors, the winners of which will face the Bar for the WWE Raw Tag Team titles. I believe it's at the Greatest Royal Rumble, if I'm not mistaken, or be it Backlash. To be honest, I didn't really catch that. I'm not going back through my notes to check and see if I took that down, but it's going to be winner takes on the Bar. That's pretty much all it turns into. It's just really a shame that they dropped the ball at the Andre the Giant Memorial, because you could have had some real heat for this match coming up next week on Raw. The next match is Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. This match happened because earlier in the show, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn turned up on Raw to speak with General Manager Kurt Angle about possibly getting a job, as they were fired from Smackdown, and they were unable to win at WrestleMania to get themselves reinstated on Smackdown. Kurt Angle had a really great line talking about how TNA was hiring, which was some amazing shade thrown on the situation with Alberto Del Rio being fired from Impact Wrestling for no showing an event. The crowd, I don't remember what the crowd's reaction was, but my reaction was pretty like, ooh, that's pretty heavy. And it's actually kind of ironic considering how good TNA was to Kurt Angle after he left the WWE about a decade ago. The match itself was a quality match. It ended in a cheap finish with a double countout, with neither man being able to win the match because the winner was going to be offered the quote-unquote last spot on the roster. But I understand from a storyline perspective that they needed either a double countout or a double disqualification to happen so that neither man got it, so they could kind of ratchet up some sort of tension with the situation. I don't know where they're going to go with this. But should be interesting to see, especially with the Superstar shakeup that's coming in the next week or so. So we'll have to see where they go with this. Now, I have heard rumblings that they're going to try doing something like maybe bringing back El Generico, which was Sami Zayn's old luchador gimmick when he was in Ring of Honor, and maybe having Kevin Owens come in under a mask as well, and instead of KO, it'll be OK on his shirt. He won't change his ring attire much. Maybe like the, was it Mr. America thing that Hulk Hogan did back on SmackDown a while ago, like years and years ago. So we're going to see what they do with this. Hopefully they have something entertaining planned, because if it's another one of those Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn invade a show, beat up the general manager sort of thing, like this story's been played out, it's been done to death. I want to see them do something new and fresh with these guys. Our final match of the night is the 6-man tag team main event, which was largely forgettable. It was The Miz and the Miztourage versus Finn Balor, Seth Rollins, Jeff Hardy. It just seemed to be a very, very... It felt like a house show match. That's really what it felt like. This was a house show match where not only was the pairing up of everybody a house show match, the move sets were very house show. It's sort of everybody gets their signature spot in. We get double Whisper in the Winds by no, sorry, not the Whisper in the Winds. We get the double Poetry in Motion with both Seth Rollins and Finn Balor acting as the launch pads. We get the end of the match after Seth Rollins ends with the stomp on The Miz. We get the stomp on both guys in the Miztourage, followed by a coup de grace on both guys in the Miztourage, followed by a Swanton Bomb on both guys from the Miztourage. So you've taken your biggest pay-per-view of the year, you've followed it with your post-Mania Raw, and your main event in your post-Mania Raw is a match that could be on a random house show on a Wednesday night in some random town in the US or Canada or wherever. It didn't feel special in any way. It didn't set anything up. It really didn't advance anything. It just kind of killed time, and I was very, very disappointed considering all the other things that happened on this night. Overall for Raw, I think the show felt a lot longer than its 3-hour runtime, especially as the main event dragged. There were some segments that didn't feel quite right. The No Way Jose thing seemed kind of out of place. The Revival Good Brothers match was something we've seen before. The Seth Rollins promo segment, we've seen it before. The six-man tag was a house show match. It didn't feel special, and I think that's what made it feel longer than it really was. So we're going to see where they go from here. Hopefully they have some good storylines brewing heading in the Backlash. On to Smackdown. The Blue brand starts off with an announcement that Daniel Bryan has resigned as SmackDown General Manager. This, of course, is delivered by Shane McMahon, who then introduces the new General Manager of SmackDown Live, Paige. So thank God that the rumors of Hulk Hogan coming back were wrong. Paige comes out, gets a good pop from the crowd. She talks about wanting to shake things up. She talks about she starts by talking about the superstar shakeup that's going to happen next week. But that's next week, and she's going to give the fans something that they want to see this week because she's got all these wonderful superstars. So how about we make a main event of Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles in a non-title match? The crowd loves that, and we cut to break. We come back with the Usos versus the New Day. The stipulation being that whomever wins the match is the number one contender for the tag team championships. This was a very, very solid match featuring 100% fewer midgets in pancake costumes, which made me enjoy things a whole lot more than I did at WrestleMania. The match itself was pretty much your classic Usos versus New Day type of match. Lots of back and forth, lots of signature moves, very hard-hitting, very, very quick-paced match, which was very, very entertaining. It's kind of funny because I look at this match and then I look at the match that was on Raw versus with the Revival versus the Good Brothers, and I can watch the Usos New Day over and over again and not get too tired of it, whereas teams like Revival and Good Brothers, they just don't really have that chemistry that lets them have that kind of that elevated type of match that makes everything seem a lot more important and a lot more dramatic than it really might be given the context. In the end, the Usos do win. The Bludgeon Brothers come out as the Usos are standing in the ring victorious, and it looks like Luke Harper has a new mask. It's like a cow skull or a goat skull to sort of complement the sheep mask from Eric Rowan. They sort of stare each other down, and that ends the whole thing. Overall, I found everything to be quite enjoyable. I don't know what they're going to do going forward because they've kind of pushed the Bludgeon Brothers as this unstoppable force. And, you know, you're in a triple threat match and they took care of the triple threat match in like 5 minutes at WrestleMania. Where are they going to go from there? I hope they have a plan because I'm not really seeing a very, very enjoyable match coming in the near future for these two teams, but I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Next up, we cut to a backstage segment with Naomi and Natalya talking about the first ever women's battle royal, not Royal Rumble, at WrestleMania. And Naomi's posing with her trophy, which looks like a gold-plated version of the female reproductive system. And they're talking about how jealousy is so 7th grade. It sets up a match. The match itself was not very good. The women looked like they were moving in slow motion. It really didn't do much. I don't know why Naomi is getting this sudden push. I don't get it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But anyway, Naomi wins with a split-legged moonsault after pretty much being dominated most of the match. So the finish kind of seemed to come out of nowhere. But either way, the Naomi takes it, and we move right along. We go backstage to Renee Young, who is standing at the door of the dressing room for Shinsuke Nakamura, and I'm going to guess that Nakamura's heel turn is because they make him get dressed in a janitor's closet. Renee Young asks why he attacked AJ Styles after the match with the low blows and the kicks and the Kinshasa on the outside. Nakamura talks about being overwhelmed by emotion. Renee Young calls him out on it, almost pretty much saying, like, come on, like, that's kind of bullshit. Really, what's the reason? And Nakamura pulls out a no speaky English type of line. So it looks like Adam Sandler is not just a writer for Monday Night Raw. It looks like he's been put on the general creative team with the casual racism and fat jokes type of stuff going on. I was actually concerned that this was a direction that they were going to take with Shinsuke Nakamura following WrestleMania. I believe I mentioned this in my WrestleMania review that I really hope they didn't just turn him into a generic foreign heel. This was a step in a bad direction as far as I'm concerned. They could have done so much better with Nakamura because he can cut a good promo. So to feed him a line like the no speaky English just really... it really rubbed me the wrong way. Was not a fan. We go back to the ring where Charlotte Flair comes out for a promo to talk about her match with Asuka. Talking about how she made magic with Asuka in the ring, and she's looking forward to see who the next person who is going to be the next person that she can make magic with in the ring in terms of quality of match. Charlotte sounded asleep. It was one of her sleepy time promos. I guess they woke her up from a nap before sending her out to the ring. She was like goofy smiling all over the place. I don't know what it is with the women's division all of a sudden and really goofy smiles. Ronda Rousey, like everybody's catching the Ronda Rousey disease. I don't remember the women faces smiling quite so much or quite so broadly or quite so many times. It's just a little unnerving. But anyway, we get our next debut, actually the first major debut on SmackDown, which are the Iconics. We get Peyton Royce and Billie Kay coming out to make their SmackDown debut, and they spend a good amount of time mocking Charlotte Flair's promo, which was kind of eaten up by the crowd. I think the crowd was not very into Charlotte's promo. So they kind of ate that up a bit. This was another segment that kind of seemed like it was moving in slow motion. The rundown of Charlotte on the mic was very lengthy. The beatdown after the promo was very, very lengthy, and it wasn't helped by the fact that the first half of the beatdown, Charlotte Flair had to look super, super strong by overcoming the impossible odds and taking on two women by herself before finally succumbing to the beatdown. And then the beatdown itself just seemed to drag on. And then, of course, there was the spot with the two of them trying to lift Charlotte's body into the ring, which that looked terrible because Charlotte was sandbagging, and she was sandbagging way too much. It didn't make the duo look good in any particular way. But anyway, it comes across, the referees separate everybody, the Iconics do their little pose, they leave the ring, and here comes Carmella's music. Carmella runs out with the briefcase, she grabs a ref, brings him to the ring, and goes to cash in. And this segment I legitimately hated. I legitimately hated this segment. I hated the quote-unquote comedy with the referee not understanding what Carmella was saying about cashing in the briefcase because she was screeching with what she was saying, and everything she was saying was unintelligible because it was nothing but high-pitched shrieking. And the one thing that I really, really disliked was that this seemed to almost confirm that killing off Asuka's streak was done at the expense of a shock headline for the title change. It doesn't look like Asuka Flair is... It looks like that's a one and done. There was no talk of a rematch. There was no setup of any kind of long-term program. In fact, Asuka did not appear on WWE TV this week at all, which was very, very strange. You would think that there would be some kind of reaction, some kind of even a pre-taped segment, but there was nothing. What this basically did was they killed the streak to make Charlotte look even bigger and stronger and better than everybody else. They had two new people come into the company and do their debut, and they immediately went after Charlotte to try and establish themselves, and they beat down Charlotte so that Carmella could come out, cash in the Money in the Bank contract, and win the championship. And in all of this, I can't help but think there are two women's titles that have changed where Asuka was the central catalyst in basically everything, or at least a major part of the puzzle, whereas Asuka was used to set up the Nia Jax Alexa Bliss feud, and a lot of Asuka's heat was taken away during that feud because Asuka had to look more and more vulnerable to build Jax up to be stronger and stronger. We move over to Asuka versus Charlotte, where the build up to the match was not especially good. I don't know why they build Asuka as the overwhelming favorite. And they did that. Well, I mean, they did that to make Charlotte look even better when she overcame the odds to beat Asuka and end the streak. But now, you know, in the wake of that and building up Charlotte to be even bigger and larger than life, you have the Money in the Bank contract cash in. I can't help but think that Asuka really got the shaft out of this whole thing. In terms of what her position is now, where's she going to be? Is she she's pretty much in the back of the line for everything, from what it would seem. Especially more so since you have all of these new debuts coming up. Probably going to be more in the next week or so with the Superstar shakeup, and she's not on TV at all. So I don't exactly know what's going on with this. Hopefully we'll get some clarity next week. I'm going to imagine she'll be on TV. I would hope that they'll have some kind of segment, if not a match, to kind of get a reaction and see where they're going with all of this. Next up is Randy Orton versus Bobby Roode versus Rusev to determine who the number one contender will be for the United States Championship against Jinder Mahal. Jinder Mahal is at ringside. He's sort of sitting in a custom chair on top of a very lavish carpeting. He's dressed up very nicely. He's got Sunil Singh by his side and the title belt in his lap. One of the things that I thought was very telling was Corey Graves announcing that the first thing that Jinder Mahal had done as United States champion was to cancel Rusev Day. I thought that was a very, very telling line, as Rusev was easily the most over man in the match, yet he did not win. Again, he is essentially the Susan Lucci of the WWE. Bonus points to anyone who gets the reference. He didn't eat the pin this time. But what happened was he softened up Bobby Roode. Randy Orton knocked him out of the ring. Orton with an RKO out of nowhere. And it's the 1, 2, 3. It will be Randy Orton versus Jinder Mahal for the United States Championship. And Rusev once again is looking for a program where he's actually going to matter. So time will tell if he is going to be part of the Superstar shakeup. I hope they find something for him, because it's getting to be kind of sad to see how someone who is so completely over with the fans is getting little to no love from management. I don't know what it is where management has a problem with people who get over without management's, I guess, approval. You're selling a product, and the people who are buying the product want that product. If you give that to them, they will buy more of it. So, yeah, I don't get where the WWE management is going with this. I'm stumped as to why Rusev is constantly being held back. He's kind of SmackDown's Braun Strowman right now. This brings us to our main event as AJ Styles takes on Daniel Bryan in a non-title match. This match was set up by Paige earlier in the night. The match itself is pretty good. Fairly back and forth. Lots of great offense. Lots of interesting counters, but you would expect it from two guys who are very, very technically gifted. The match ends in a disqualification when Shinsuke Nakamura hits the ring, and first of all, really, really sells the heel aspect of his character by striking Daniel Bryan in the head, which is going to grant nuclear heat, considering Daniel Bryan is coming back from concussion issues. He then follows that up with a low blow to AJ Styles. to set up a Kinshasa, followed by another low blow to end off the show. And that is your SmackDown main event. It looks like they are going to keep the program going between AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura for a little while. I'm hoping that bringing Daniel Bryan into the mix is not going to turn this into another convoluted triple threat type of situation for AJ Styles' title. If they're going to put the title on Nakamura, make it a one-on-one contest. The fans really deserve that sort of thing. The fans deserve to see champion versus challenger. I think they're starting to get a little bit sick of the 3-way, 4-way, 5-way, 6-way, 9-way matches. So just let it be 1 versus 1. You know, even if it's a dusty finish, at least let it be 1 versus 1. One-on-one, champion versus challenger. Overall, I thought SmackDown was kind of the yin to Raw's yang, whereas Monday Night Raw had a lot of really great debuts and call-ups and all of that, but very, very blasé in-ring action. I thought SmackDown had much better in-ring action, but was a lot weaker on the returns and on the debut side of things. I was not a fan at all at the women's title change because I think it was cheap. I think it cheapened everything about what they built between Charlotte and Asuka for WrestleMania. Granted, that wasn't very much. They could have done a much better job there. And especially in light of the fact that Asuka now just seems to be caught in limbo. Where is she? What roster is she on, first of all? Will she be part of the Superstar Shakeup? How is this going to impact her going forward? Is she still going to have any heat? Because you got to rebuild her now. You need to rebuild because, again, she doesn't have those mad promo skills. She's not a multiple-time champion. She doesn't have the major title wins. She has an NXT championship, but she doesn't have the major title wins. She is now just basically another woman on the roster, except she dresses in very fancy clothes, or sort of flamboyant clothes, I guess I should say, and has an interesting ring entrance. But other than that, you've taken the shine off of that, and I think that the WWE has made a couple of critical errors in the women's division. They've taken a lot of long-term potential and kind of flushed that down the toilet for short-term shock value. This brings us to the final show of our main roster recap in the post-WrestleMania week. 205 Live. Now, this is the first episode of 205 Live that I have seen. So I'm going to ask you guys to be kind to me. I'm getting used to the roster. I'm getting used to the style. The last time that I watched Cruiserweights on a regular basis would have been back about 20 years ago in the days of WCW. So, and maybe a little bit in the WWE when they had Taka Michinoku. That's how far back it's been since I've had, some genuine exposure to cruiserweights. So this is going to be a bit of a learning curve for me. But the show overall was pretty good. This one's going to be a lot shorter because, well, one, the show's only an hour, and two, I'm going to give some general impressions of what I thought. We start off with the video package treatment of Cedric Alexander's win on Sunday. Which, WWE always does great video packages, which is a really big contrast to their live production because a lot of their live camera work is so terrible and a lot of their live production work is so terrible. But here I think they did a really great job of the video recap of the WrestleMania win over Mustafa Ali. This will bring us to our first match with Kalisto defeating Akira Tozawa. I'm really reading my notes here because I had to take very, very reasonably detailed notes because I don't really know these guys. I thought this match had some good back and forth action. I thought some of the spots were incredibly crisp. The Spanish Fly spot was amazing. I thought the end of the match with the roll-ups and counters to the counters and the back and forth pinfall attempts, which eventually culminated in Kalisto hitting the Salida del Sol, his finishing maneuver. I actually had to look that up. I didn't know that off the top of my head. But yeah, it looked very good. It was very crisp. The crowd was a little bit dead for this match. I don't think they were as into it as they would normally be, and I think it's because following the end of SmackDown Live and what had happened in that main event kind of took some of the air out of the crowd. So yeah, it looked like the crowd looked a little tired, and I'm not actually all that surprised considering how much wrestling there has been since Friday. We follow this match with a confirmation that there's going to be a tornado tag match for next week. So this, I'm guessing, is part of an ongoing storyline that I'm not entirely familiar with, so I'm not really going to comment on it. We then move to a match of Drew Gulak versus Mark Andrews. Gulak reminds me a lot of Stevie Richards, that sort of same kind of heel persona that he portrays, and also Gulak seems to be there. I think as a bit of a rib against Vince McMahon and how Vince feels about cruiserweights, where he wants cruiserweights to wrestle in a WWE style rather than, the luchador style or the Japanese style or what have you. Vince likes to have that sort of uniform type of look for everything, in spite of the fact that it makes cruiserweights look really, really bad. So I think that they put Gulak in there to kind of represent that, and it makes him a wonderful natural heel. I love how he starts off with a tease that he's going to give people a PowerPoint presentation, and people seem to be really into that. Now, full disclosure, I know Drew Gulak is probably one of the ones I know the most, because he was featured pretty prominently on Monday Night Raw during the days when Enzo Amore was still part of 205 Live. So I know a little bit about Drew Gulak. I kind of like the character. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's having the guy campaigning for the cruiserweights to be less cruiserweight like is kind of funny, but he's also a really good wrestler, so that helps, because if you can be comedic outside of the ring and dead serious inside the ring, it kind of gives you the best of both worlds. This match was definitely a clash of styles because Gulak is a ground and pound type of guy, submission guy. Andrews is a high flyer. The match was pretty good overall. It started off early with Gulak dominating. Andrews makes the comeback with some high flying maneuvers, hitting his finisher. I don't remember the name of his finisher. I will get better at this, I promise. The ending comes with Gulak sending Andrews into the corner turnbuckle, and as he comes out, he locks in his Gulak, which is a really good-looking dragon sleeper. After the match, Gulak continues to attack Andrews, and out comes Tony Nese to chase Gulak out of the ring. Tony Nese hits an amazing move over the top rope to the floor. I don't know if there's a specific name for that maneuver, but man, did that look impressive, and the fact that he almost stuck the landing was even better. So that kind of ended that segment. We get another promo for the Tornado Tag match next week with Gentleman Jack Gallagher and the Brian Kendrick, I believe, are the two that were back there talking to Drake Maverick. Again, it seems that there's an ongoing storyline that's underpinning all of this, and I'm not really sure what it is, but I'm going to have to get caught up before next week. We then move to the ring for sort of the coronation, I guess, of Cedric Alexander as champion, sort of the introduction to the 205 Live audience. One of the things I thought was kind of funny was Cedric came out in like this really nice purple shirt that just failed to be the right shade of purple to match his title belt. So it looked like he tried to color match, but just missed the mark, which was kind of funny. He's talking, they do sort of the standard championship thing. Out comes Mustafa Ali to say that, to kind of put over the match and to say, hey, there's a long list of guys that are looking for a title shot, and he's in the line. Just after that, Buddy Murphy's music hits. Mustafa Ali and Drake Maverick walk toward the ramp side of the ring to kind of see what's going on. and Cedric Alexander's kind of further back toward where the announce table would be. Buddy Murphy comes from behind and attacks Cedric Alexander. The attack looked very sloppy because he couldn't get a good grip on Cedric Alexander. So Buddy Murphy kind of needed 2.5 attempts to hit his finisher, which was very, very sloppy. The show ends with Drake Maverick yelling at Murphy, who's shrugging it off and heading up the ramp as we end the show. Overall, I would say that this was a decent show. I'm kind of interested to see where these storylines go, especially in light of the fact that there's only an hour of programming per week. So you really have to run a show tight to get everything in under the wire. So, the matches themselves, I like them. I like the energy. I really wish that SmackDown has more of that type of energy. I wish they'd inject some of that into Monday Night Raw. But I guess what they're doing is they're kind of branding things in a different way. Monday Night Raw is kind of your big hoss matches. Your SmackDown is more of your athleticism. And, your 205 Live is definitely athleticism. But we're going to see what they do with the Superstar Shakeup. We'll see how that impacts things. Doubt it's going to do anything at all to 205 Live, but we'll see what it does on the two main shows. Anyway, that is the wrap-up for the post-WrestleMania main card or main roster shows. I promise I'm not going to do another one of these hour-long videos. So, let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know what you think of the format. Next week, we're going to split everything up. Let me know if you want to keep it in chronological order or if you want me to go back to the regular good, bad, and ugly. And we'll see you in the next one.